The rain hit the glass walls of the penthouse apartment in downtown Manhattan. The city lights blurred into streaks of gold and white. But inside the living room, it was colder than winter. Sophia stood there, his wife, the woman he had loved since university. Her eyes were no longer warm. They were sharp, calculating, almost disgusted. "I can't live like this anymore," she said, arms crossed. "You are nothing, Ethan. No ambition, no power, no future." Ethan stared at her quietly. He was wearing a simple gray shirt, sleeves rolled up. No watch, no designer brand, just a man who looked average. But there was something different tonight, something calm. "You knew who I was when you married me," Ethan replied softly. "Yes," she snapped. "I thought you would change. I thought you would at least try. But look at you, 30 years old and still working in that pathetic logistics office." She laughed. The sound hurt more than the words. "And Daniel," she continued, adjusting her hair. "He came back from London. He owns 2 tech companies now. He drives a Ferrari, Ethan. A Ferrari." There it was. Daniel, her ex, the man she once cried over. Ethan's jaw tightened slightly. "So you want a divorce because your ex is rich?" he asked. Sophia didn't hesitate. "Yes." The word landed like a bullet. Silence filled the room. Outside, thunder roared. Inside, something in Ethan's eyes changed. Not sadness, not anger, but clarity. 3 years. For 3 years he had hidden who he really was. Not because he couldn't reveal it, but because his grandfather had made a rule. "If you want to inherit the coal empire," the old man had said, "you must live like a normal man for 3 years. No money, no power. Find someone who loves you for you." And Ethan had believed Sophia was that woman. He gave up private jets. He gave up luxury cars. He gave up the identity of Ethan Cole, heir to Cole Global Holdings, a multinational empire worth $40 billion. He became just Ethan. And now, she wanted to leave because he looked poor. He almost smiled. "Sophia," he said quietly, walking toward the table. She mistook his calmness for weakness. "Don't try to convince me," she said coldly. "Daniel is picking me up tonight. I already signed the divorce papers." She threw a folder onto the table. The papers slid toward him. "I'm done pretending," she continued. "I deserve better." Ethan looked down at the documents. His name, her signature already written, prepared, planned. For how long? He picked up a pen. Sophia's heart pounded, not from sadness, from impatience. She wanted freedom. She wanted Daniel. She wanted money. "Say something," she demanded. Ethan looked up. "For 3 years," he said calmly. "I woke up early to make you breakfast." She frowned. "For 3 years, I walked instead of driving so we could save money for your fashion boutique dream." She looked away. "For 3 years, I believed you loved me." His voice didn't shake. That made it worse. "I did," she said quickly. "But love doesn't pay bills." Ethan nodded slowly. "You're right," he signed. The sound of the pen scratching paper felt final. Sophia exhaled in relief. "Good," she said. "At least you're being mature." Then she made the mistake. "You'll understand someday," she added smugly. "When you see Daniel and me on business magazines." That was when it happened. The slap, not violent, but sharp, enough to silence her. She froze, hand on her cheek. You hit me?" Ethan lowered his hand. His eyes were no longer soft. "Don't mistake my patience for weakness," he said quietly. "I never stopped you from leaving. But don't insult what we had." Sophia stepped back, shocked. Before she could speak again, the doorbell rang. She straightened immediately. That must be Daniel. She grabbed her designer suitcase from the corner, already packed. Of course it was. She had planned everything. She walked to the door and opened it. Standing there was Daniel Wright. Tall, expensive suit, confident smirk. He looked Ethan up and down and chuckled. "So this is the guy?" Daniel said. "You really downgraded after me, Sophia." Ethan said nothing. Daniel stepped inside like he owned the place. I heard about the divorce, Daniel continued casually. Don't worry, man. I'll take good care of her. Something you clearly couldn't afford to do. Sophia clung to Daniel's arm. Let's go, she said softly. Before leaving, she turned one last time. Goodbye, Ethan. He looked at her. Goodbye. The door closed. Silence. The rain continued outside. Ethan stood there alone in the empty apartment. Then his phone vibrated. Unknown number. He answered. Yes. On the other side, a respectful voice spoke. Young master, the 3-year observation period has ended. The board of Cole Global Holdings requests your return. Ethan walked toward the window. City lights reflected in his eyes. And my grandfather? He asked. The chairman passed this morning. You are now the sole heir. Silence. Not shock. He already knew it would happen soon. Prepare the jet, Ethan said calmly. Tomorrow morning. Yes, Chairman Cole. He ended the call. Chairman Cole. The title felt heavy. He looked around the apartment. Cheap furniture. Small space. Memories. He didn't regret loving her. He regretted misjudging her. His phone buzzed again. A message. From Sophia. Sophia asterisk. Daniel says he might invest in a logistics company soon. Maybe you can work under him someday. No hard feelings. Ethan stared at the screen. Then he laughed. For the first time that night. Soft. Cold. He typed one sentence. Ethan asterisk. Tell your ex. He can't afford to invest in anything I own. He put the phone down. Tomorrow, the world would remember who Ethan Cole really was. And soon, Sophia would realize something terrifying. She didn't just divorce a poor man. She divorced the future richest man in America. And when her ex came asking for his billions, it would already be too late. The Grand Meridian Investor Gala was the kind of event that did not merely showcase wealth but performed it. The kind of evening where crystal chandeliers hung like captured constellations above men and women who spoke in percentages and futures rather than emotions, and where every handshake carried the quiet weight of potential millions. Sophia had never attended something like this before. As she stepped out of Daniel's sleek black car, the building rose before her like a monument to everything she believed she had chosen correctly. Glass, gold, and power layered into architecture. The red carpet stretched forward under soft lighting, cameras flashing intermittently as recognizable entrepreneurs and investors paused just long enough to confirm their importance. This, Daniel murmured confidently as he adjusted his cufflinks, is where you belong. His tone was warm, but beneath it was ownership, the subtle suggestion that she was here because of him. Sophia smiled, though her heartbeat was louder than she expected. The air felt different here, expensive, controlled, predictable in a way that comforted her. There was no struggling in rooms like this, no worrying about rent. No calculating grocery budgets. This was security. Inside, the ballroom shimmered with quiet dominance. Conversations floated through the air like strategic chess moves disguised as casual exchanges. Waiters moved silently between clusters of investors, and a massive LED screen near the stage displayed the evening's agenda. One announcement stood out. Special introduction. New chairman of Cole Global Holdings. Daniel scoffed lightly when he noticed it. Cole Global, he muttered, swirling the amber liquid in his glass. Old money empire. Shipping, tech acquisitions, energy grids. They own infrastructure most people don't even realize exists. The previous chairman died this morning. The heir has been hidden for years. Hidden? Sophia asked, intrigued. Apparently the old man forced him to live quietly before taking control. Some kind of character test. Probably just a spoiled heir who never worked a real day in his life. Sophia nodded slowly. Hidden heir. Test. It sounded almost dramatic. For a fleeting second, Ethan's face crossed her mind. She pushed it away. The lights dimmed gradually, and the hum of conversation lowered into a respectful silence. A host stepped onto the stage, speaking smoothly about legacy, transition, and strategic evolution. Daniel leaned slightly closer to Sophia. Watch carefully, he whispered. When Cole Global announces its direction, The market shifts. The massive ballroom doors opened. Footsteps echoed against marble. Measured. Unhurried. There was no dramatic music. No flashy entrance. But the shift in energy was undeniable. Sophia felt it before she saw him. A ripple through the room. Heads turning. Whispers rising. And then, Ethan walked in. Not the Ethan she had left behind in a modest apartment. Not the man in rolled-up sleeves and quiet routines. This Ethan wore a perfectly tailored charcoal suit that fit him with effortless precision. His posture straight. His expression composed in a way that radiated authority rather than demanded attention. Behind him followed senior executives, men and women decades older than him, walking half a step behind not out of coincidence but respect. Sophia's fingers tightened around her glass. Her breath stopped entirely. Daniel froze mid-sip. "That's impossible," he murmured. But it wasn't. Ethan walked onto the stage, accepting the microphone with the calmness of someone who did not need to prove himself because the room already understood his weight. "My name is Ethan Cole," he began, his voice steady low, carrying naturally through the silent ballroom. "Effective immediately, I assume leadership of Cole Global Holdings." The applause came not out of politeness, but recognition. Sophia felt the ground beneath her sense of certainty begin to fracture. Cole. The surname she had never questioned. The man she called small. The husband she abandoned because she thought he lacked power. Her mind replayed every word she had spoken in their apartment. Asterisco no ambition. No future. Not enough. Meanwhile, Ethan continued speaking about expansion strategies, vertical integration, global partnerships, and acquisition targets. The language was confident but not arrogant, ambitious but controlled. Investors nodded. Analysts typed notes. Cameras focused entirely on him. Daniel's jaw tightened visibly. "This changes nothing," he muttered under his breath, though it clearly changed everything. Because Right Tech, Daniel's company, had been seeking funding from Cole Global for months. After the speech concluded, investors surged forward. Daniel straightened his posture, determination replacing shock. "We need to speak to him," he said quickly. Sophia barely responded. Her eyes were locked on Ethan as he stepped down from the stage, surrounded by executives yet somehow entirely alone in his composure. Daniel approached first. "Chairman Cole," he said, forcing a confident smile. "Daniel Wright. We met briefly." Ethan turned slowly. Recognition flickered across his face. "Yes," he said evenly. "You came to my apartment." The memory hung in the air. Daniel cleared his throat. "I own Right Tech Innovations. We've been in discussions regarding strategic investment." Ethan glanced subtly at one of his executives. "Right Tech," he repeated calmly. Financial review indicated unstable projections and aggressive leverage. The executive nodded. "Negative cash flow trending downward, Chairman." Daniel's smile stiffened. "There's context behind those numbers." Ethan's gaze remained steady. "Cole Global does not invest in instability." The words were not loud, but they were surgical, public, definitive. Sophia felt heat rush to her face. Daniel's fingers curled slightly at his sides. "There may be room for renegotiation," Daniel pressed. Ethan's eyes shifted briefly, and for the first time he looked directly at Sophia. There was no rage there, no longing, only distance. "I wish you both success," he said calmly. Then he walked away, just like that, dismissed. Daniel stood frozen. Sophia's chest tightened painfully, because in that moment, she realized something more frightening than anger. Ethan didn't want to hurt them. He simply didn't need them. And irrelevance hurts more than revenge. Later that night, headlines began circulating online. Young Chairman Ethan Cole signals aggressive expansion. Cole Global eyes tech sector. Daniel stared at the screen inside his penthouse, frustration simmering beneath forced composure. Sophia stood near the balcony doors, watching the city lights flicker. "You went to see him, didn't you?" Daniel asked suddenly. She hesitated. "Yes." His expression darkened. "And?" She struggled to answer. Because what could she say? That Ethan had given her 8 minutes? That he had spoken calmly about loyalty during storms? That he had not begged? "He's not the same," she said quietly. Daniel let out a bitter laugh. "No," he agreed. "He's not." Across the city, Ethan stood alone in his new office, the skyline stretching endlessly before him. An executive approached with updated reports. "Chairman, shall we continue evaluating Right Tech for potential acquisition if their valuation drops?" Ethan remained silent for a moment, watching the city as though it were a board awaiting his next move. "Yes," he said finally. Immediately, faint pause. "No." His reflection stared back at him in the glass. "When it hurts the most." And somewhere in the quiet space between regret and realization, Sophia finally understood that she hadn't just divorced a man. She had walked away from inevitability. And inevitability was patient. Success does not collapse in a single dramatic moment. It erodes quietly, almost politely, like a shoreline being eaten away by waves that seem harmless until the land beneath your feet suddenly gives way. That was how Right Tech began to fall. At first, it was only a slight shift in market confidence. A few cautious articles questioning long-term sustainability after Coal Global announced its entrance into AI-driven logistics. Analysts began comparing infrastructure strength, global partnerships, supply chain dominance, and while the reports remained professionally neutral, the undertone was unmistakable. Competing with Coal Global was not a rivalry, it was exposure. Daniel noticed the difference immediately. Investors who once responded within minutes now required days. Meetings were postponed. Expansion talks slowed. Partnerships that had seemed certain were suddenly under review. Nothing catastrophic. Nothing loud. Just quiet hesitation spreading like a hairline crack across glass. Sophia watched the transformation in him from across their penthouse living room, noticing how his posture changed first. The relaxed confidence that once filled the space now tightened into restlessness. He paced more, slept less, spoke sharply when interrupted. The same man who had once mocked Ethan's modest routine was now drowning in projections and emergency calls. "You don't understand how aggressive this is," Daniel muttered one evening, staring at 3 screens filled with comparative charts. "Coal Global isn't just entering the market. They're absorbing supplier networks before we can even respond." Sophia stood quietly behind him. She didn't say what she was thinking, that Ethan had warned no one, that he hadn't attacked publicly. He had simply expanded. And expansion, when backed by billions and discipline, does not need to threaten. It replaces. Another week passed. Right Tech stock dipped 7%, then 12, then 21. Each percentage point felt heavier than the last. Daniel stopped attending social events. He stopped bragging. He stopped smiling the way he used to. Meanwhile, business media began highlighting Chairman Ethan Cole's leadership style. Disciplined, calculated, unexpectedly hands-on. Stories surfaced about how he had lived quietly for 3 years before assuming control. How he understood operational details most heirs never bothered to learn. The narrative was powerful. Self-made heir. Strategic visionary. Young but precise. Sophia read every article in silence. And each word felt like a mirror she had once refused to look into. One evening, after yet another tense conference call ended with Daniel slamming his phone onto the table, he turned toward her with something dangerously close to suspicion in his eyes. "You met him before the gala," he said. It wasn't a question. Sophia hesitated, and that hesitation was enough. "You went to his office." "Yes," she admitted softly. Daniel let out a sharp breath through his nose. "Did you ask him to back off?" "No." "Did you ask him to invest?" Silence. Daniel's expression hardened. "You did. I thought maybe." "You thought maybe what?" he snapped, stepping closer. "That he would save us? That he would give you both worlds." His words struck harder than volume ever could. "I wasn't trying to manipulate anyone," she said quietly, though even she heard how uncertain it sounded. Daniel laughed bitterly. "You left him because he looked weak," he said. "Now you want him because he's strong." The accusation lingered in the air long after he walked away. And for the first time, Sophia couldn't immediately reject it. Because beneath her justifications, security, ambition, stability, there was an uncomfortable truth she had never fully examined. She had equated visible power with worth. She had mistaken patience for lack. And now patience was conquering everything around her. Across the city, in an office that overlooked the same skyline but felt infinitely steadier, Ethan reviewed acquisition reports with calm precision. Right Tech's valuation has dropped another 15%, his chief financial officer stated. Liquidity concerns are increasing. Ethan nodded slightly. He did not smile. He did not gloat. There was no triumph in his expression, only assessment. Begin informal talks with minority shareholders, he said evenly. Quietly, the executive paused. You intend to acquire? Ethan's gaze remained on the documents. Yes. Hostile. A small silence followed. No, he replied. I prefer inevitability. The words settled into the room like strategy carved in stone. Ethan had no interest in revenge. Revenge was emotional. This was structural. And structures, once weakened, collapse under their own imbalance. 2 nights later, Sophia stood alone on the balcony of Daniel's penthouse, the wind brushing cool against her skin, while the city lights shimmered below like distant reminders of choices already made. She remembered the night she left Ethan. How certain she felt. How convinced she was that she was stepping toward something greater. But certainty, she now realized, can be manufactured by comparison. Daniel had seemed greater because Ethan had chosen to appear smaller. And now the illusion had evaporated. Her phone vibrated softly in her hand. A news alert. Coal Global announces full vertical integration into AI logistics. She stared at the headline. Vertical integration. It meant total control. Suppliers, distribution, software, hardware, everything. Daniel's company would not merely compete. It would be surrounded. Inside, Daniel received a call that lasted only 3 minutes. When he hung up, his face had lost its color. They're undercutting us, he said quietly. At a loss. Sophia turned slowly. What does that mean? It means they can afford to bleed longer than we can. Silence. For the first time, fear replaced frustration in his eyes. And Sophia understood something that chilled her deeply. Ethan wasn't trying to hurt Daniel personally. He was demonstrating scale. And scale is merciless. Days later, an official offer arrived. Not dramatic. Not hostile. A structured acquisition proposal from Coal Global Holdings. Clean terms. Reduced valuation. Generous retention packages for key staff. It was business. Daniel stared at the document for a long time. This is humiliation, he muttered. Sophia didn't respond. Because humiliation is subjective. Reality is not. Do you think he planned this? Daniel asked suddenly. Sophia looked at him. She thought about Ethan's calm eyes at the gala. About the way he had said goodbye in the apartment. About the quiet certainty in his voice when he spoke of storms. No, she said honestly. I think he just kept moving. That night, as Daniel sat alone in his office signing preliminary acceptance documents he once would have considered beneath him, Sophia felt something inside her finally break. Not loudly, not violently, but with the soft, irreversible sound of understanding. She had not chosen power. She had chosen appearance. And now she was watching real power operate from a distance she could no longer cross. Across the city, Ethan signed expansion approvals without hesitation, his pen moving smoothly across paper that would reshape markets by morning. He did not think about Daniel. He did not think about Sophia. He thought about stability, growth, longevity, because love had once been the center of his future. Now structure was, and structure does not leave. The day Daniel signed the final acquisition agreement did not arrive with drama or resistance, because by the time a man reaches the moment where signing is the only option left, the real battle has already been lost quietly in the weeks leading up to it, in boardrooms filled with tense silence and in late-night calculations that confirm what pride refuses to admit. The conference room at Coal Global was designed with understated dominance. Polished stone surfaces, seamless glass walls overlooking the skyline, and a long table that did not demand attention yet somehow controlled it entirely. Daniel sat at one end, his posture straight but no longer relaxed, the confident ease that once defined him replaced by rigid composure. Across from him sat senior executives, calm, analytical, professional, and at the head of the table sat Ethan. He did not look triumphant. He did not look angry. He looked steady. That was worse. The terms were clean, transparent, strategic. Right Tech would become a subsidiary under Cole Global's logistics division. Daniel would retain an executive title during transition, though real authority would shift upward immediately. The valuation reflected market reality, not past ambition. Daniel read every page twice. His signature, when it finally came, was controlled, though the slight pressure of the pen against paper betrayed something deeper, the quiet collapse of self-image. When he finished, he looked up at Ethan for the first time since entering the room. "You could have crushed us completely," Daniel said, his voice restrained but edged with something close to bitterness. "You didn't." Ethan's expression remained neutral, but not cold. "Markets do not need cruelty," he replied evenly. "They need structure." It was not a boast. It was a philosophy. Daniel gave a short, humorless nod, understanding in that moment that this was the difference between them. One built quickly through momentum and visibility, the other built patiently beneath the surface, prepared for storms long before they arrived. When Daniel left the building, cameras were already gathering outside, financial media eager to capture reactions, eager to frame the acquisition as either bold expansion or strategic domination. Sophia watched the news from the penthouse, her hands clasped tightly together as analysts praised Chairman Ethan Cole's foresight and discipline, describing the move as inevitable, almost surgical in its precision. Inevitable. That word echoed inside her, because inevitability had been standing in her apartment months ago, asking her quietly whether love was enough without visible power, and she had answered no. Later that afternoon, an announcement circulated across every major financial platform. Cole Global's chairman would address the media personally regarding the company's new direction and future expansion strategy. Sophia didn't know why she felt compelled to go. Perhaps it was closure. Perhaps it was desperation disguised as courage. Or perhaps it was the final, painful need to stand in the presence of what she had misjudged. When she arrived at Cole Global's headquarters, the building felt different from the first time she had entered it after the gala. There was no hope left in her steps now, no silent expectation that something unfinished remained between them. Instead, there was acceptance, heavy but honest. Inside the press conference hall, reporters filled rows of seats while cameras lined the back wall like silent witnesses to power being exercised without noise. And then Ethan stepped onto the stage. The room quieted instantly. He wore a dark suit, impeccably tailored, but what commanded attention was not fabric or style. It was composure. He carried himself like a man who no longer needed validation, who had already endured loss and chosen direction instead of resentment. He spoke about integration, sustainability, long-term infrastructure, and global partnerships. He outlined 5-year strategies with clarity that reassured investors and unsettled competitors. Every sentence was measured, every pause intentional. Sophia listened from the back of the room, her chest tightening not because he was powerful, but because she now understood that he had always been. When he concluded, a reporter raised a hand. "Chairman Cole, with such rapid expansion, is there stability in your personal life as well?" The question drew mild laughter from the crowd. Ethan allowed himself a faint smile. "Yes," he replied calmly. "Stability is important." He paused briefly before continuing. "I am pleased to announce my engagement to Olivia Grant, whose expertise in philanthropic technology integration will support Cole Global's global outreach initiatives." The room erupted in flashes and murmurs. Sophia felt the air leave her lungs. It was not jealousy that pierced her in that moment. It was finality. There was no emotional undertone in his announcement, no hidden message directed toward the past. It was simply forward motion, personal and professional aligned, steady and unshaken. Later that evening, as the city lights reflected across glass towers that now carried his name in quiet dominance, Sophia requested a final meeting. Not to ask for reconciliation. Not to negotiate. Just to stand face to face with the reality she once underestimated. Ethan agreed. His office was silent when she entered, the skyline stretching endlessly behind him like proof of everything she had failed to see. They stood several feet apart. There was no anger between them. No tensión. Only history. I saw the announcement, she said softly. Yes. I hope she stays during storms, Sophia added, her voice steady despite the weight behind the words. Ethan studied her for a moment, not with resentment, but with understanding. So do I, he replied. Silence settled comfortably, which somehow hurt more than conflict ever could. I thought I was choosing certainty, she admitted quietly. But I was only choosing what looked certain. Ethan nodded once. Most people do. There was no cruelty in his tone. Only truth. I did love you, she said. I know, he answered gently. But love tested by doubt does not return the same. Her eyes filled, though she did not let tears fall. I don't expect anything, she continued. I just needed to say I was wrong. Ethan walked toward the window, looking out over the city that once felt far away from both of them. You weren't wrong for wanting security, he said calmly. You were wrong for thinking it couldn't be built. That was the difference. She had wanted visible power. He had been building invisible foundation. When she left his office that night, there were no dramatic goodbyes, no promises to remain in contact, no lingering touches. Some endings are not explosive. They are quiet recognitions that two people once stood at the same starting point and chose different definitions of worth. Weeks later, as Olivia Grant stood beside Ethan at a formal charity launch event, cameras capturing a partnership built not just on visibility but aligned ambition, Sophia watched from a distance. Not physically, but through the endless stream of headlines and announcements that confirmed what she already knew. He had not needed revenge. He had needed clarity. And clarity, once gained, does not look backward. In the end, Sophia did not lose Ethan to another woman. She lost him to the version of him she refused to believe in when belief mattered most. And as Cole Global expanded across continents, integrating systems and shaping industries,